What's good? We're back in this thing. Today we're going to be going over this infinite grid transition. I've seen it done in a lot of music videos and it's actually crazy the amount of different ways that you can use it and just cool transitions that you can make out of it. So I'm going to be showing you the concepts behind it and making it as easy for you guys to follow as possible so that you guys can come up with your own transitions out of it. If you're new here, what's good? My name is Brian. I make music video tutorials here on YouTube, and if you're not subscribed already, go ahead and do that because I upload 3 times a week. And if you're interested in anything in the music video editing realm, I probably have a tutorial on it already, so go ahead, check my channel. I've actually uploaded so many times this year already, so there's bound to be a few music video tutorials that you're gonna like. With that being said, I need you guys to drop a like, I need you guys to drop a comment right now. It helps push my content to other people, and it only takes a second of your time. I saw when I posted this story of this effect on my Instagram, so many people swiped up and were saying this is crazy, whatever, blah, blah, blah. We need this effect. It's actually 4 o'clock in the morning right now as I'm recording this because so many people swiped up. So I'm going out of my way to record super late for you guys. So go ahead, drop a like, drop a comment. It really does mean a lot. Also, if you want to support the channel and get your hands on some high quality music video editing assets, you can go to my website, briandelmonte.com, check out my packs and presets. I'll have a link to the website down below as well as a playlist of a bunch of tutorials that I did on those packs and presets. It's the best way to support the channel and it's greatly appreciated. That's enough talking for right now. Let's get into the video and break down these effects. So before we get into the video, like I was saying, that this effect and concept has been used in a lot of music videos in the past, and there's really cool ways you can use it. So I'm just going to show you a few that came to mind, and people swiped up on my story when I posted that and were like, this reminds me of blank music video. So one of the ones I got was floating. I didn't even really think about this one, but this one's really cool. It's obviously the same concept behind here. You can see it's just the transition of like this infinite grid. You can get the same look really easily actually using the same concept that I'm going to be going over in the tutorial, as well as this is probably the closest one to what we're doing today, is this like grid of just a bunch of different clips. It like zooms out and then zooms back into other clips. It's a cool way to transition between 2 clips or just show a bunch of different footage at once. And the footage I'm actually going to be using is from the Snot Megan music video. This is what kind of brought the idea to my mind of doing this tutorial. The really crazy uses of this like grid, like infinite grid look. So I'm just gonna go into After Effects and kind of break down the basics real quick, and then we'll get into the more in-depth tutorial just to see if it's something, because this is a more in-depth tutorial. You're gonna need to know a little bit more about After Effects probably for you to understand this really well. So I'm just gonna break it down very briefly just to see if maybe you should go watch some other of my tutorials before this. It's kind of similar to the infinite zoom transition that I had with a chain. So if you watch that one, I would recommend probably watching that music video first and then coming back to this. It's pretty much the same concepts. This one's just a little bit more complex, I think. 2 primary things we're gonna be using in this tutorial are pre-comps and the camera movement, just a 3D camera. So you can see I have one main pre-comp here, it's called main, and then inside that is a grid. And then the grid is basically broken down into 4 different segments. As you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4. As you can see, they're all the same clips. As you can see, each segment is the same clip, just in a different format. So if I went ahead and turned off 4, we'd lose this one, and you can see that. So then inside of each pre-comp, you guessed it, they're just the clips lined up together. That's pretty much it for inside of each clip. You can just see they are all just lined up however you want to have them look. You can see this is the most complex one. I thought it looked cool, just like a bunch of random different positions and stuff. And then on top of this, I added some offset and RSMB. I'll be going over all this stuff more in depth in a second. I just wanted to kind of give you a brief breakdown of what that's doing. So then basically what's going on is this grid composition here with all of the clips. In the main composition, we're just zooming in and out of different positions in there and kind of animating and making it 3D. You can do whatever you want with the camera here. I just made it so it was a little 3D looking. It has like that angle perspective to it, and then just zooms back into Snot. And if you can see there's like any like jitters or whatever in the clips, as you can see right here, I just looped the footage over and over again. So if you had longer clips, it would look a little bit better. But since I just took clips from a music video, I just looped it over and over again. So that's why some of the footage looks a little jittery. So to start off the effect, basically what you're gonna want is a few clips, handful of clips. I guess it could be all the same clip and you could do the grid with 1 clip. I'd recommend just having a few so it has a little bit of variety to it and it looks a little bit different, but whatever you want. And I have 4 clips here. I'm going to drag them all into the composition. Since I knew that I was going to do this effect, they're all exactly the same length, but It doesn't really matter. You can loop them, or you can change clips all the way through or whatever. Like you can have it change after one ends. You can have another clip start playing in that position. For us, I think the easiest to at least just understand what's going on is probably having 4 clips all the same length or similar length. And then you can see we have this, and it's called whatever the clip composition is called. So I'm just gonna go ahead and rename that to main, because it does get a little confusing if you don't name it, since we're gonna have so many different pre-comps. And then I'm gonna highlight all of these by clicking shift and clicking on the top one and then the bottom one, and then going to pre-comp and name this one grid, because this is gonna be the overall grid that we're gonna be using. Now to do that, you see, if you go back into main, it's basically exactly what we see here. So basically what we wanna do is have a bunch of small videos playing inside of here. And instead of making the video smaller and losing resolution, what I'm actually gonna do is go inside the grid comp. We're gonna make the we're gonna go up to composition here in composition settings, and we're gonna change the settings. So we're just gonna make the comp bigger instead of the footage smaller. That way it preserves quality and just overall looks better. I'm gonna go ahead and times each of these numbers by 4, just making the composition 4 times as big as it was. So I did not graduate college, so I'm gonna use a calculator here. 1920 times 4, and we got 7680. And then 1080 times 4 is 4,320, and then click OK. And now you can see it's just one clip in the middle. And as you can see, if we go back into the main, it's the exact same thing. You can't see this black area because this comp is the same size as the footage, because we didn't actually scale the footage. We just made the comp inside bigger. It'll make a little bit more sense in a second. So the next thing I'm going to do is just play around with the footage. We can make something a little bit different than I did in example that I was showing earlier. So maybe we want this water to be a little bit bigger or something on the left hand side. So I just went ahead and turned off all the other layers. I'm going to scale it up just a little bit, maybe to like 150, and then put it in the corner over here. I just clicked on the footage and I'm dragging it. And you can see, if you want to make it a little easier to see what we're working with, since we do have black bars here, I could just go ahead and make a white layer and drag it to the bottom. That way we can position the clips properly so there's no like white spots. And then I'm just using the arrow keys to move the clips over to the left and right. And if you hold H on your keyboard, you can bring this hand tool, move around, as well as zoom in with your scroll wheel on your mouse. So then I'm just gonna go ahead, and once we got it in a position we want, click Control D on that layer and then go to position. And then I'm just going to drag it down. And I like using the position instead of just dragging down. So that way it's perfectly in line horizontally, and then we just drag it down vertically. And then we can see we have this footage here. It's like 3 in a row. And if you highlight all of them and just change the position on one of them, it will move all 3 at the same time. So I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of make it as center as possible. I'm not gonna be too specific with it. If you want, you can turn on your grids or proportional grid here, and you would just line this one up with the middle. I guess I'll do that for right now. And then go ahead and turn off that grid. I'm going to fit it right now so we can see what we got. And then after that, I like to highlight all these clips and then click on this little cube here. You can see it's like a grayish blue right now, and I'm just gonna color code it similar to the color of the footage. So for this one, for our case, orange. That way it just doesn't get confusing when we duplicate a bunch of them over and over again. And then just basically find a clip or something that you want next. I think this one looks pretty cool just to have in the center. So I'm going to just scale it up maybe just a little bit, and then go ahead and do the same thing where we just duplicate and change the position. And that's really all this part of the tutorial is just lining up your footage to kind of make a grid however you would like. You could really just line it up however. As you can see from the example that I showed you, this is even looking different. Just kind of fun to play around with and get different looks. This is where you can get kind of creative, and then again just color coding it so we know that we already used this footage. And then maybe for this one, we're going to go into the transform and play with the rotation and maybe make it 90 degrees. That way we have one that's flipped the opposite direction. Click Control D. Then again, just color code it once you're done with that, and then do our last clip. And then since there's black bars here, I'm just gonna leave a little white gap in the middle. And then basically just the same concept. I think it's pretty cool to play around with the different sizes and rotations of the layers just to kind of make it a little bit more interesting so they're not all the same size. And that's why I'm going ahead and making these really small ones and they're in combination with the other ones. And if you wanted to get really perfect with this, you would just be lining up the values of each of these. For example, like the vertical value, you'd be matching up with this one and then the horizontal with that. But for right now, I just eyeballed it and it looks pretty good and no one's gonna really know. And then one last one, just go ahead and color code it. That way you know which each of them are. After we're done doing the grid, I'm just gonna go ahead and delete that white solid so you can't see the gaps here that we had. And then once you have the grid lined up, you can see once you play all the footage, it's gonna look something like this. Just pretty cool, your footage playing all. Like I said, I have it looping because I didn't have like really long clips. So this is just bouncing back and forth, but it still does the job and I think it looks good. Now, obviously the more clips and everything you add on to this project, it's gonna be a little bit more intensive of an effect. You know, having the composition at that 8K or whatever that ends up being resolution with all these clips playing, it's gonna be a little bit more intensive on your computer. So keep that in mind when doing this effect. I'm gonna be adding a few other plugins, but I think it's worth it. Even my computer runs pretty slow. I feel like I have a pretty decent computer, so it is a more intensive of an effect and the render will probably take a decent amount of time. But after that, I like to then pre-comp all of these segments just to make it easier to understand, as well as that's how you get that sliding effect. So I start off with the ones on the left-hand side and then just go ahead and pre-compose it and just name it 1. I just like to do in order from left to right. So for this one, the pink ones are next. So then go ahead and pre-compose, name that 2. This one right here, we'll name it 3. And then the last one, 4. And then I just put them in order down here. Now we have our main, which is just zoomed into right here. So if you can see, we actually go ahead and click S on our keyboard and scale out. You will see that this is what the overall grid looks like. And the reason it's just showing this is because it's basically scaled in a bunch. So the next thing I like to do, so we don't have to render out a bunch and spend a lot of time rendering stuff, I like to add the camera movement first, and then we can go ahead and go back and add the motion of the sliding frames in the grid and the motion blur and all that stuff. So I like to get the camera movement picked out first and then go back and tweak it. So to do that, go ahead and right click down here in the bottom left and click new, and then go to camera, and then go ahead and click OK. And then go to toggle switches and modes until you see these 2 boxes right here. Make sure that motion blur is enabled. Click 3D layer, and then also click the motion blur tab. Then go ahead and go to your transform in the camera. And then to start off, just basically find wherever you want to start off. We can start off with this clip of snot here, but if you change the last number in the position, you can go ahead and zoom out, and then you could go and click C on your keyboard to scroll through to get all these different tools. You can zoom in with this tool. If you just keep on clicking C, you can find different parts of the camera tool. And say you wanted to start with this clip, you could easily do that by just navigating through and scaling in properly. And just like that, you're starting at that clip. So it all depends on where you want to start. We can actually just go ahead and for this one, let's just go ahead and highlight all those and reset and start at the actual clip that we started zoomed in at. I'm going to go ahead and keyframe all those and then maybe go a decent amount forward just so we're just focused in on that clip for a little bit. Add all those keyframes back. So it's gonna play for this long before it starts zooming out, and then maybe go a little bit longer. I basically just eyeball it, and it's all preference just to see how far you want it to go before it zooms out. And I'm actually gonna go and turn the render quality to like 1/3 or something just for this part, so it's easier to see. And then I'm going to zoom out like almost all the way here. And then if you scroll through by clicking C, or you can go up to this camera tool up here and you can see all the options, the pan, orbit, and the dolly. If you want to use the orbit, you can give it like a plane look where it zooms in. I did it in the other effect, so we can go ahead and do a little bit of it. I like keeping it kind of minimal, but right now we'll do it, and then you can just move it wherever you want. And you can see, obviously, the grid kind of ends here, and we'll fix that in a little bit. I like to do that after we have the camera movement, just so it doesn't make the computer lag a lot. So we can see, let's run through what we've got so far. That's looking pretty cool. Zooms out here. Now we just kind of want to find where we want the next clip to zoom into. So I'm thinking maybe this clip over here. So to do that, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go just about the amount of time that we went forward for this, roughly, and then go over here and zoom in over here. I'm going to use the Z rotation to go 90 degrees, so I know it's exactly 90 because we made it in a grid. And then I'm going to go ahead and reset the point of interest and position. So just holding shift on both of those and clicking reset. And then it's basically going to be zoomed in where we started off and put 90 degrees because we added the 90 degrees to the Z rotation. And then I'm going to just basically find where that clip is. And we can go ahead and play that. And as we can see, it rotates all the way through. And maybe we want that, maybe we don't. We can have it so it starts the rotation. If we keyframe it to 0 here, it starts the rotation towards the end. Let's see what that looks like versus the other way. I think I'm more of a fan of that. It seems more like a transition. The camera movement's really where you can make it unique and make it your own effect. So don't follow what I'm doing exactly, just play around with it and you'll find something cool. And then I'm gonna highlight all these keyframes and click F9. You can also right click and go to Keyframe Assistant and Easy Ease. Just gonna make it smoother and make the transition look better overall. I really like that camera movement. If you really want to get crazy with it, and I would actually recommend this if you're making your own transition, you can play with the graph editor and you can change the velocity of all these different things. It's a little bit more advanced and it's not really necessary, but you can make it look really, really good if you spend the time on the graph editor and do all these things. So now our transition's pretty much done. We just have to polish it up, make these slide up and down, and then clear out these black background here. And now to get these clips moving vertically and kind of like infinitely looping, I'm gonna go to the last frame, so right where it finishes, and go ahead, make sure you're on that frame. That way when we have the offset, when we add the next effect, it's gonna finish right as it finishes the transition. Then go ahead and double click on grid here, and then drag offset onto each one of these layers. You can do it one by one. Keyframe the center shift to end right there, because we want this clip to be in this exact position when it ends. That way it zooms into the right spot. If you can see here, if I tweaked it and it ended right here and I went back into the main comp, it wouldn't be zoomed into the clip properly. So that's why I keyframe that default position there, and then go ahead and click U on your keyboard, and we can go to the beginning, and this is where we can tweak it. And you can drag it as many or as little times as you want. So we can see if we have this one play, it moves pretty cool. And then I'm gonna easy ease them just so it starts off a little slower and ends a little slower. You can see it kind of has a little bit of momentum to it now. And then I'm going to do the same for the next clip, keyframe the center shift. And then I'm gonna have this one do the opposite direction. I think when they're next to each other, it's cool to have it opposite direction. It doesn't always have to be, but I think it looks probably the best, or at least I would recommend having them at different speeds. You can see this one's a different speed and a different direction. I think I'm actually gonna make this one just a little bit slower, so one less rotation, and then also easy ease them, and then offset onto this keyframe, or onto this one. And for this one, since this is the one we started off on, I'm gonna keyframe this default spot to the beginning frame, because this is the one we started off zoomed in on, and then go to the end and tweak it from there. And you can see I have it going the same position, but I have the speeds different. And that looks really good, but it doesn't have any motion blur, and it's not like really looks like it's moving that much. These are all like little things now that I'm just getting to and adding a little bit more sauce to. So it's not really necessary, but I would like to add RSMB to it. What this is gonna do is it's real smart motion blur. It's basically like the secret sauce plugin, honestly. All I'm gonna do is just drag on RSMB and not change any values on all of these. And this is where it gets really, really intensive on your computer. So if you're not done with the effect and changing the camera positions and all that, I would recommend holding off on the RSMB, or maybe even just waiting until you're going to go ahead and render and then slap it on, because right now you can see this is me trying to render at 1/3, and it's only done this little bit in all the time I've been talking. And then you can see with real smart motion blur, it looks a lot better and just looks, I think it just ties the whole effect together, because now we can see that we have pretty much the effect done. All we have is these black bars that we just need to fill out. And you can go back in and make the comp bigger and just fill them out yourself. Or what I would recommend to do is just add motion tile onto it and add it onto the grid pre-comp layer. And then go ahead and do the output width and height and just change it to whatever you need for it to fill out. For our case, 250 seems like it fills out it perfect. And normally I would say recommend mirror edges, but I think it looks better off if you don't mirror the edges. But that's just my personal preference, so do whatever you want. And there we are, boys. That's the whole entire effect right there. And then I think one last thing we have to tweak is, since I used easy ease, it messed up the position. So I'm just gonna go back into the comp with all the different layers and just make the offset so the clip starts in the center or where it lines up in the comp. You might have to go back and forth a few times. Yeah, so we just need to move it up a little bit more. And that should be good. And for starting off the transition, that looks pretty good for me. And there we go, there's the whole transition. I like how this one came out a lot. And just thinking of this, you guys could like do infinite loops for like Instagram or something. So say you would just want it to zoom into the same clip. And if it zoomed in, say this clip was playing right here, and it zoomed into that one, you could just have it infinitely loop. So say it would just zoom into the same clip and then it would zoom back out. So that's just a thought, something cool that you could do. There's honestly so many different possibilities that you can do with this. So I'm like excited to see what you guys come up with. If you come up with something cool, send it to me on Instagram, at Brian Dalmata. That's pretty much all I got for you guys in this tutorial. If you made it all the way to the end, I really do appreciate you. Thank you so much. If you haven't already, like, comment, and subscribe. Go ahead and do that. It really helps support my channel and push my content to other people. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and we're almost close to 50,000 subscribers. So thank you guys so much for showing support. Texture Pack V2 is going to come out at 50,000 subscribers. So that's any incentive to get there a little bit faster. Look out for that. Before I go, if you want to support the channel more and also get your hands on some high quality digital editing assets, you can go to my website, briandalmata.com, and check out my packs and presets. Like I mentioned, the V2 of the texture pack is coming out soon, but it's not too late to get the V1 because they're both going to be different and very unique. I'm really excited for the V2, and I'm going to do like a full week of tutorials just on that pack. So definitely is going to be a crazy week of tutorials. But yeah, guys, this is pretty much all I got for you guys in this one.